So why wasn't Marvel TV, and specifically the Daredevil series, connected to the MCU? Yes, there was loose mentions, but we now know it was never meant to be in the MCU. They weren't allowed. So let's talk about why this was a thing. So by now, I think most people know that, yes, retroactively, Daredevil, the Netflix series, and all that is, of course, canon. But at one point, it was loose canon. It was Marvel Entertainment trying to play off of the events in the MCU, but they weren't actually allowed to be in the MCU. I know that's weird because they referenced the events of the MCU. They reference the incident, the Avengers incident. They mention Thor's hammer. They mention the Battle of Harlem with Hulk and Abomination, but the films never acknowledge them. So as it turns out, there's multiple reasons for this. So in this video, we're going to talk about studio politics and, well, the latest update from the man that ran the show over on Daredevil. So back in the olden days when Marvel Studios was independent, before they were bought by, well, Disney, they didn't just acquire Marvel Studios, of course, they acquired all of Marvel. And at that time, Marvel Studios was an independent branch of Marvel Entertainment. Marvel Entertainment owned all the TV rights. And of course, they were involved with all the rival stuff as well. Marvel Entertainment would have their hand in on all the films and also TV series that were produced years later, like Legion, Gifted, and whatever else. And Marvel Studios was just focused on, well, their film division. Now, once Disney acquired all of Marvel, there was still this split between people that were running the show: Kevin Feige, Marvel Studios; Ike Perlmutter and Jeff Loeb, Marvel Entertainment and TV and the comics division. And largely, they were working together loosely. Their political views, their analysis of how Marvel should be handled were very different. Marvel Studios was in the business of, let's spend money, deliver quality, and then we'll make more money. Marvel Entertainment's business was, let's not spend money, let's make cheap products, but just push tons of them out there. We're going to make a bunch of money eventually, and hey, both strategies work. I'm not arguing against that. Both strategies do work. Like, literally, comic books do that. They throw out so much crap every week, but, they get hits. So there you go. But things were falling apart, right? The division between Marvel Studios and Marvel TV was a major thing. They just didn't align their views on what they wanted. So when it came to the announcement of all the Netflix shows being produced by ABC Disney and distributed through Netflix, Marvel Entertainment, of course, locked stuff away. And Marvel Studios couldn't touch it. Marvel Studios would then lock away stuff from Marvel Entertainment and never acknowledge those shows because they felt slighted. And again, it makes sense. So recently, while talking about Daredevil and everything, Stephen DeKnight was talking about the lack of connection to the MCU. And he can finally talk about this because, one, the non-disclosure agreements have pretty much, expired at this point, and everybody's moved on, and now we know the history of everything. So he said, and I quote, "The MCU and Marvel Television at the time were not exactly simpatico. We had very limited access to the toys and had to basically stay in our lane." End quote. Okay, so it's exactly as it's intended to be taken, right? Marvel Entertainment was, and we know this for a fact because it was revealed, that they took characters, embargoed characters, locked them away. The Chris Nolan embargo. If I got Batman, nobody can touch Batman. Hence why Batman couldn't appear on Smallville or the CW for a while, and even now it's still happening with DC to an extent. It was always a problem, even with Marvel. And this just kind of explains to you what was happening. Marvel TV was locking away characters that they were sure Marvel wasn't going to use. And in some instances, like Iron Fist, they wanted to use. But they took characters that they saw could be made on the cheap. So Runaways was taken. even though Marvel Studios desperately was working on a Runaways film for the better part of 8 years. Blade was meant to be taken away. Moon Knight was meant to be taken away. There was a lot of characters that they were going to lose to Marvel Entertainment. And something else that he added was very interesting, where he says, that isn't a complaint. I think it forced us to really concentrate on the character and not flashy cameos or gimmicks. And I think that that's one of the things that honestly did work for it to a degree. But let's be real, they still were forcing in Easter eggs and references, and they were just connecting to their own stuff. You know, mentioning things happening down the street or on the other block, and like lines just being dropped about other events happening. But I think this really just all points to what the Netflix CEO said just recently, where he said that when you looked at Marvel Entertainment, they just pocketed money. And if you guys don't remember, it wasn't too long ago that the man in charge of Netflix said that he didn't understand how Marvel was going to do this, and that he wasn't really in the know that Marvel Entertainment was not exactly Marvel Studios. And despite the contracts and everything in place, Marvel Entertainment, I should say, was doing things on the cheap. And, you know, he talked about how they were taking forever to do some of these things and do it as cheaply as possible and produce everything as cheap as possible just to be able to save money from the budget that they had from obviously the parent company, the two parent companies, Netflix and Disney, Marvel. And then they were just like, yeah, toss it out there. And again, it was a different business. It was a different mentality from Marvel Entertainment. They were always operating in this way. Ever since really the 90s, this is how Marvel Entertainment operated, which is why all those characters were auctioned off and sold for so cheap just to quickly make some pocket change. You know, that's nothing new. And it's unfortunate that had Marvel Entertainment just worked with Marvel Studios, we could have had what most people thought and believed we were going to get, which was truly a connected universe. Iron Fist could have actually been good. Unfortunately, the end result was what we got. And at least now, it's all canon again. But, you know, are they ever going to acknowledge all that stuff and bring it back in? Probably not. Thank you for checking out that video. And thank you for your continued support. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, do whatever you will. And if you're so inclined and would like some additional content from us, which includes unfiltered content and bonus discussions, we do offer it exclusively in our member section. We hope to see you there. So thank you for watching and have a good one.